going on YouTube? Just wanted to do a quick video tonight, talk to you about something that's near and dear to the heart of any competition shooter, and that's fiber optic sights. But I kind of want to get into the theory behind them, because a lot of people agree that they're good and you should use them in competition, but they don't really talk about how to use them correctly. A lot of people think that it's just a high visibility front sight, and that's good. But they use them in the manner that you would just use that high visibility front sight to draw your eye through your rear sight to the front sight. And that is true to an extent, but that's not how you really use them in competition shooting. I mean, that does help you make precise shots, and you begin aiming more precisely once you acquire that front sight for longer shots, but you don't do that on every single target. So we'll just talk about how this is something that I've come to understand fairly recently, but how I use fiber optic sights. We have kind of two examples here, differing front sight thicknesses, rear sight openings, and just kind of selecting a sight that's going to work for you, and we'll kind of get into it. So we'll get on the tabletop for that. All right, so I got two of my pistols here and talk to you. You'll hear a lot of times when you watch a lot of videos on the internet that you need to see what you need to see to make a shot. And so you'll also hear about how you need to focus on the front sight, focus on the front sight, front sight, front sight, front sight, and that's true too, but it's difficult to really divine the meaning. It took me a long time for this finally to sink in, and I hope that I can short circuit that process a little bit to you and help you come up the learning curve quicker. So seeing what you need to see. So for this particular sight picture, if I was shooting at something 25 yards away or whatever, I'd want to see equal height, equal light. The dot doesn't really mean anything when I'm taking those shots after I establish where my front sight is. Conversely, when I am shooting at targets out to about 12, maybe even 15 yards, and especially if it's an open A zone, that's a really big target area to shoot at. So seeing what I need to see on a target like that is just basically going to be, I'm going to use that nice big fat ledge on my rear sight. I'm going to cut the target in half. I'm going to look to a point on the target as I'm transitioning the gun onto the target. I'm going to cut it in half with the ledge of my rear sight. Then as long as I see that flash of red in the notch held over the area on the target I desire to hit, I'm going to pull the trigger. I didn't see the relationship necessarily between my front sight and the different sides. I mean, it could be like that, kind of cocked to the left. It could be there, cocked to the right, kind of down. As long as I see kind of that flash of red generally in the notch, as long as the rear notch is held over the target, and I'm looking through the rear sight onto the target, it's generally going to show up in that general area. And there's plenty of sight misalignment exercises you can do with a standard IDPA or USPSA target and really figure out how badly a sight picture you can get away with and still make good hits, provided you have a good trigger pull. So I'll put an annotation, a link to a couple of my favorite videos on that here, and you can check it out. So what ultimately ends up happening is, if you're shooting at speed and you're shooting closer range targets, middle range handgun targets, what ends up happening is that red dot on the front of this sight ends up being like a red dot sight on a rifle. As long as that little dot shows up in that notch, I'm good to take a shot at most pistol distances out to maybe 15 yards. Beyond that, you actually do have to start lining up the sights, but once you're able to fire an accurate shot, your grip is squared away, your trigger press is squared away to the point you can do that. There's a lot less of sight picture. You have to see where the gun is indexed on the target, obviously, but you don't have to really spend a lot of time kind of lining them up. So speaking about that, if you are considering buying some fiber optic sights, you'll see they'll always give you kind of a front sight thickness, a front sight height, a rear sight height, notch width, and a notch depth. All those things are going to be very personal choices on what to go. So on the left you have, these are they're Dawson sights, but they're sold by Cajun Gunworks. These are their EZD sights on the left. And on the right, these are the standard shadow sights. I think the 5.5mm front sight blade. So you can kind of see there that the front sight on the shadow is a good bit thicker. There's less air between the blades and the thing. So Cajun markets these sights as saying that it helps old aging eyes pick up the front sight because there's more air or whatever. And I've actually gotten to the point where I really don't buy into it, and I don't like it. I would rather have something like a more traditional kind of target sight picture where there is less air, because I find that I can more precisely align those to make it a really precise shot where especially when you're on the clock trying to do it with these kind of things, it's easier to get, you know, the dot overwhelms the front sight and you don't look at the form of the front sight blade to make sure you got the equal height, equal light picture you need to take really precise shots. As a result, my groups with this pistol at any further range they start to open up at 7-10 yards. It's not a big deal. They're pretty well comparable, but anywhere beyond that I can get more precise sight pictures out of those sights than I can these. And because of the brilliant red dot hanging out on the front of my muzzle, it doesn't, like, that's what I'm using to pick up my front sight. I'm not using the air gap, so I don't think that's a big selling point. So I would recommend probably a tighter front sight to rear width notch. So if you've got like a 1.15 width, or excuse me, a 0.115 front sight, maybe you want a 0.125 or 0.13 gap in your rear sight. So that would be my recommendation on how to buy those. The height of the front sight and the height of your rear sight, there's a math equation you can do to figure out what distance you want to zero at, etc. Buy Dawson sights. Just buy Dawson. Those are the sights that you want. Buy the Dawson Precision fiber optic sights. So that's my little sermon on how to use fiber optic sights in competition. And once you really do understand how to transition the gun so that the sights more or less show up in alignment, all you're doing is visually verifying that the dot is in the notch and you can fire shots at that point. And it really is that fast. If you watch some of the match videos and stuff like that, the guys really going to town, they're not seeing equal height, equal light on all of those shots. They're seeing as much of a sight picture as they need to make the shot, and that's how you use a fiber optic sight to do just that. Thanks for watching. Please check out some of my other videos. Like, subscribe, share. And check out my buddy Patrick Cook and his ammo company on Facebook, Cook Ammunition. They sell all sorts of great 9 and 40 gamer loads. So if you don't have a reloading press, you can shoot the same ammo as fools like me who spent hundreds of dollars on a nice fancy reloading rig without any of the time or the expense of that equipment. So stay safe and see you guys out on the range.